All right, which best explains why all the Earth's fresh water is not available for human use. Well, of all the water on the Earth, 97% of all the water on Earth is salt water in either oceans or salt lakes. Okay? That leaves 3% that's fresh. Now, we can divide this 3%. 2% is frozen. Glaciers, ice caps, stuff like that. It's frozen. The remaining 1% is mostly groundwater. Okay? And that's what most places use. There is, some of that is also surface water, like rivers and lakes, but most of this 1% is groundwater. Okay? So the majority of fresh water, okay, is frozen. How can upwellings improve fishing for fishermen? So an upwelling, all right, here's the ocean. Upwelling is when water down at the bottom of the ocean, okay, it's got all these nutrients in it, and it gets brought up to the surface. Now, what that's going to cause is it's going to cause the phytoplankton to reproduce like crazy, right? Because now they've got more nutrients. Why wouldn't they? And so the algae and the phytoplankton reproduce, and so then you're going to get more fish, and you're going to get more fish that eat the little fish, and you're going to get more big fish that eat the big fish that ate the little fish that ate the plankton. Okay? So if you are a fisherman, okay, out fishing, or a fisher person, okay, you would want to go somewhere where there is upwelling, because the upwellings bring nutrients. The nutrients mean a better food chain. If a lake has excess levels of phosphates and nitrates in the water, what will most likely happen? All right, so these phosphates and nitrates are the main ingredients in the nutrients from upwelling. They're also the main ingredients in fertilizer. That's why they help the algae and the phytoplankton grow. Okay? So when there's an excess of these things, especially in like a lake or a pond that's a much smaller ecosystem than the ocean, okay, then you're going to have, the fancy word is eutrophication. We talked about this during the ecology in, I think, like quarter 2. Basically what's going to happen is they're going to cause, like let's say here's your lake, you're going to get a lot of algae growth, right? And because there's all that algae, sunlight can't get down to the plants, and the plants die. The fish that eat the plants, they die. Okay? And then, so you've got all this death, and so then what's going to happen is there's bacteria, and those bacteria break all these things down. Okay? And when they break them down, they use up dissolved oxygen. All right? So the oxygen in the water goes to the bacteria, not the fish and the animals and the plants and whatever. Okay? So then, basically, everything dies. Okay? So temperature will decrease. No. Turbidity will decrease. No. It would actually increase. All right? Because of all the algae. Dissolved oxygen will increase. No. It would actually decrease. Growth of the algae in the lake will increase. Absolutely. Which is the most accurate method scientists use to predict the age of the Earth? The most accurate way of figuring out how old something is radioactive dating. So what they do is they compare the radioactive isotopes in the rock or the fossil or the bone or the pottery, and they can figure out how old it is. And that's called you get what we call an absolute age. Absolute. Oops. So we can compare rocks on Earth and figure out the ratio of uranium to lead, and we know that most rocks on Earth, or the oldest rocks on Earth, are 4.6 billion years old. And that's how we know the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. Let's see here. All right. Best reason for scientists to study ice cores obtained from Earth's ice caps. Which is the best reason for scientists to study ice cores obtained from Earth's ice caps? So, what happens is you've got this, sheet of ice, like a glacier, and you drill down into it and you pull out a core of ice. And inside that core are these little gas bubbles or air bubbles. And we can go back and, maybe this part of the core right here is from 20,000 years ago. Okay, YA would be years ago. And so then we can look at that gas bubble and we can figure out what the atmosphere was like 20,000 years ago. So when you see ice cores, I want you to think study past climates. All right. What is the most likely result of overusing a particular antibiotic? So you're going to have more resistance to the antibiotic by bacteria. So you would have more infections caused by bacteria resistant to the antibiotic. That's why you should always take your antibiotics as the doctor prescribes them. Which illness could most likely be treated with antibiotics? Okay. Influenza and the common cold are caused by a virus. Strep throat is a bacteria. And diabetes could be genetic, or it could come about because of that's not what I want to say. Lifestyle. Okay. All right. So you figured out something there would be treated with antibiotics. How can biotechnology help farmers overcome sudden changes in the global climate? All right, by changing the types of soil. That's not biotechnology. Developing crops that are resistant to adverse weather. Perhaps. By rotating the crops within the same field. No. By only planting crops in the winter. No, those are not biotechnology. So that would have to be the answer. That would be genetic engineering. Oops. How has biotechnology helped to improve the agricultural industry? By developing irrigation systems that cover a large land area, by creating some crops that resist certain insects, by producing soil free of decomposers, by developing machines that help farmers harvest crops faster. So we're looking for biotechnology. This is engineering. This is engineering. This is stupid. You want decomposers. They help make nutrients available. All right, so by creating crops that are resistant to certain insects. Again, that's genetic engineering. The table shows the food choices for two species. Their food choices are different. So they will not compete. Now, if you had bird A and bird B, and they both eat seed, the same kind of seed, okay, then they would compete. But these two are eating completely different things, so there would be no competition there. What happens to most of the energy that moves through the food web? So remember we talked about you had the producers, the primary consumer, the secondary consumer, and maybe the tertiary consumer. As you go up from each level, only 10% makes it to the next level. The rest, the other 90%, is lost as heat. Okay? So, there you go for that one. Which is the best evidence for evolution? When you find, let's see, old rocks with complex, no. Old rocks containing fossils unlike existing ones, no. But when you find relatively new rock layers, well, see, now I've confused myself. I see the answer is B, but let's see. That's question 37. 37 is C. Oh, old rock layers containing fossils unlike existing. That makes sense. All right. So you got your rock layers, and up here you have, I don't know, a cow or something. Okay. Moo. All right, and then down here you have a fossil of some kind of prehistoric cow that looks very different. That would be an evidence of evolution. Which best explains why mammals become dominant after the mass extinction of the dinosaurs? Why did the mammals become dominant after the mass extinction? They had traits that helped them survive. That's natural selection. All right. Let's see. What time is it? Okay. Which demonstrates how genetic variation may result from a change in the environment where an animal lives. So again, when there's genetic variation, natural selection can work. Okay? So if an Arctic fox changes color because it migrated the species, we're not talking about an individual fox. We're not talking about Bob the fox. We're talking about the species of fox. A population of Arctic foxes moved to another place. Okay? And maybe there's more trees and stuff, so the white foxes stand out. So, to start with, it's probably a lot of white foxes. But ever so often, maybe there's a brown fox. And now that they're living in a wooded area, the brown fox has a better chance of surviving. So it lives while its brothers and sisters die, and it passes on its genes to its children. Okay? And over time, this happens more and more. Okay? And the white ones keep dying, and the brown ones keep surviving because they are better suited, better adapted. Where do plants get the food they need? They produce it during photosynthesis. Now I hear you. But Mr. Furlow, I learned in 3rd grade that plants use sunlight. Yes, they do use sunlight. Okay? But the sunlight is not their food. The sunlight is energy. And so they take the energy from the sun, right? And they turn that energy from sunlight into sugar. And then the mitochondria in the plant cells turn the sugar into ATP. And ATP is the fuel source for the cell. But the food is sugar. Basically, in science, anytime you see the word food, we mean sugar, energy. All right, chlorine has, all right, that's 15 minutes. So I'm going to stop here and we'll have to do a part 4.